All right, ready to really dig into this whole Ozempic thing and these new weight loss drugs?
Absolutely.
We're talking like articles,
Yeah.
studies. We even found some people who've tried it firsthand.
Yeah, it's pretty amazing, right?
And this isn't just some, lose a few pounds thing. This is about your brain, your gut, like maybe even society as a whole changing.
It really makes you think differently about weight loss.
Yeah.
Like we always hear calories in, calories out, but these medications, they're working with your hormones. They change how your body signals hunger. It's like rewiring things from the inside out.
Okay, so think of it like this. GLP-1, this naturally occurring hormone, it's basically your body's way of saying, hey, I'm full after a huge meal.
Right, like Thanksgiving dinner.
Exactly. And these new drugs, they're like GLP-1, but with a loudspeaker, that signal just blasts out all week long. You know that feeling after you've polished off Christmas dinner, you can't even look at another cookie?
Oh, absolutely.
That's the idea, but like, imagine it sticking around all the time.
And what's so interesting is all this new research on how these drugs might be going beyond just the stomach. Like, they might be working directly on the brain, too.
Whoa.
There are a bunch of theories going around. One is that these medications, they kind of turn down the volume on that part of your brain that gets all excited about food.
So that feeling of like pure bliss when you bite into a slice of cake, it's
Yeah.
just gone.
Well, not gone, exactly. It's more like you can still enjoy the food, but it's not that intense pleasure rush. It's more, oh, this is nice, not, oh my gosh, I need this in my life.
Interesting.
And then there's another theory that these drugs, they're like a reset button on the things you crave. Over time, you start wanting healthier stuff instead of junk food.
So instead of craving a late night pizza, you're like, hey, some carrots and celery would really hit the spot right now.
Well, maybe not carrots and celery, but you get the idea.
Okay, I get it. Wild.
And there's this other thought that the drugs just crank up your brain's natural, I'm full signals. Remember GLP-1?
Yeah, the Thanksgiving dinner hormone.
Right. It's like these drugs make those signals way louder so you feel satisfied with way less food.
So basically, whether they're messing with the reward system, changing what we crave, or just blasting those fullness signals, these drugs, they're working on our brains, right?
Yeah, that seems to be the case.
But is it all the medication, or are people actually changing their eating habits because of all this?
That's the big question, right?
Mm.
And it brings us to this idea of the obesogenic environment, kind of a mouthful.
Yeah, what's that all about?
Basically, it means the world we live in is practically designed to make us overeat.
Like fast food everywhere you look, those giant sodas.
Exactly. We're bombarded with cheap processed food that's engineered to be super tasty, so it's really hard to resist. We eat way more than we should.
It's true, it's so easy to eat a whole bag of chips without even thinking about it.
And it's everywhere. You go to the gas station and there's rows and rows of it.
It's kind of like, remember the whole smoking epidemic?
Yeah.
Everyone smoked everywhere back in the day, restaurants, airplanes, even doctors' offices.
It's a good comparison. At first, people didn't get how dangerous smoking was, and all the ads made it seem cool and glamorous.
Right. Like those old cigarette commercials with the doctors recommending them. Crazy.
But then, the evidence was impossible to ignore, right? People's views change. Public health policies change. Smoking bans, higher taxes, and smoking rates went down.
So are we heading for the same kind of turning point with food? Is Ozempic going to be that wake-up call, forcing us to change our whole relationship with food? Or will it just be a quick fix for a much bigger problem?
Yeah, that's the big question, isn't it? And here's the thing. This hasn't been a problem for everyone. Look at Japan.
Yeah.
Their obesity rate is way lower than a lot of Western countries.
What's their secret? Sushi and willpower?
Well, their traditional diet definitely plays a role. Lots of whole foods, not as much processed stuff or sugary drinks, but it's also their culture, mindful eating, smaller portions, those things matter.
So it's not just what they eat, it's their whole attitude towards food.
Yeah, exactly. They've got a different relationship with it. Of
Yeah.
course, they have their own challenges, but it shows it's possible for a society to stay healthier, weight-wise at least.
Okay, so Japan gives us something to think about, for sure. But let's be real, these medications, they've got potential downsides too. We dug into the research, and there are definitely some risks you need to be aware of.
Yeah, and we're not going to sugarcoat anything here.
Absolutely not.
For starters, there was this study in France, looked at people with diabetes taking GLP-1 medications long-term. The results suggested a possible link to a higher risk of thyroid cancer.
Thyroid cancer, that's scary.
It is, yeah. But it's really important to remember, this doesn't mean everyone who takes these medications will get thyroid cancer, and the actual numbers are still pretty low.
Okay, that's good to know.
But it is a risk, something to talk to your doctor about. especially if thyroid issues run in your family.
Definitely something to consider. And you remember Michelle's story. She talked about getting pancreatitis after starting one of these meds, and it sounded just awful.
Oh yeah, pancreatitis is rare, but it can be incredibly painful. Imagine the worst stomach cramps ever, but way worse. Michelle said it felt like someone was stabbing her.
She actually said it was worse than childbirth.
Yeah, it just shows you these medications can be effective for weight loss, but they come with risks. It's a big decision.
Not something to take lightly. And it's not just those immediate problems like pancreatitis. We have to think long term too. Like these meds can cause muscle loss, which could lead to something called sarcopenia.
Right, that's when your body weakens because you're losing muscle.
So you're more likely to fall and break bones as you age. Not a good look.
Not at all. Especially risky for people who are already thin.
And then there's this whole other thing, and it's a bit of a gray area. We saw reports of people feeling more anxious, depressed, even suicidal while on these medications.
Yeah, this is where it gets tricky. Scientists haven't figured out if this is the medication itself causing these feelings, or if it's all the mental and emotional stuff that comes with losing weight really fast.
Like maybe the stress of such a big change.
Exactly, it's hard to separate the two. Definitely needs more research.
It's tough to figure out what's causing what, right? Like, is it the drug itself messing with your head, or is it just the whole experience of such rapid weight loss?
Yeah, it's a real head scratcher. And it shows just how much we still don't know about these medications and their effects, especially in the long run.
Definitely makes you think twice, especially for folks who've already had mental health issues. And speaking of things that can be tough, let's talk about comfort eating. You know, how we turn to food when we're stressed, sad, or even just bored.
Oh, for sure. Food can be such a powerful way to feel better, to cope with emotions. We talked to Johan, and he said he had a really rough day at work and just couldn't shake it off.
Hmm.
And the thing was, the medication made it so he couldn't even turn to his usual comfort foods for a little pick-me-up.
So it's like he lost his go-to coping mechanism, and that's got to be rough.
Exactly. It can be a really tough adjustment for some people. It's like that familiar sorts of comfort. It's just not there anymore.
Makes you wonder if, when you take away one coping mechanism, like food, could people just end up shifting that need onto something else?
That's called addiction transfer, and it's a real concern.
Yeah.
Robin told us she actually developed a dependence on alcohol after bariatric surgery.
Wow, really?
I was like, what? Once her relationship with food changed so drastically, she was looking for comfort and escape somewhere else.
So even if you address the initial addiction, those underlying needs, they don't just vanish.
Exactly. And this is where things get really interesting, even a little mind-blowing. We found these studies, they were done on animals, but they suggested that GLP-1 agonists, the active ingredient in these meds, they might actually have a direct impact on addiction itself.
Wait, hold on. Are you saying these weight loss drugs could potentially help people with addiction?
That's what the early research is hinting at. Now, these were animal studies, and we know those results don't always apply perfectly to humans, but they're definitely intriguing.
Okay, but tell me more about these studies. This is big.
So in one study, they gave these rats unlimited access to alcohol. Basically, these rats were living the good life, just indulging all the time.
Sounds like my kind of weekend.
Right. Anyway, after a while, the researchers started giving the rats these injections of a GLP-1 agonist.
Okay, and did the rats suddenly develop a taste for sparkling water?
Not exactly, but their drinking, it went way down. They were drinking significantly less, even though they still had all the alcohol they wanted.
Wow, it's like the booze just lost its appeal.
That's what it seems like. And get this, it wasn't just alcohol. Other studies, they found similar results with heroin and cocaine.
No way. So are they saying these drugs could work on cravings for all sorts of things, not just food?
That's one of the things researchers are looking into. It seems like these GLP-1 agonists might be doing something to those reward pathways in the brain, making addictive behaviors less appealing, less powerful.
This is incredible stuff, but a lot to process for sure. Maybe let's switch gears a bit and talk about the bigger picture, the ethical and societal side of all this. We're talking about a potential game changer in how we deal with obesity, but it also brings up a whole new set of questions and challenges.
Definitely, there's a lot to unpack. For one, there's always a worry that medications like these could be misused, especially by people struggling with eating disorders.
Right. I mean, we've already seen how easy it is to get these drugs online, even without a real diagnosis.
Exactly. It's a big problem.
Yeah.
We need to make sure doctors are prescribing these medications responsibly and that there are systems in place to prevent misuse. The well-being of vulnerable people has to come first.
Absolutely. And then there's the whole issue of who can actually get these medications and whether they're affordable. Remember those articles about Ozempic shortages? The demand is so high right now. But this medication, it's not just for weight loss. It's crucial for people with diabetes.
It's a huge issue.
Yeah.
We have to make sure people who depend on this medication for its intended medical use aren't priced out or left without access because of the demand for its weight loss effects.
It's a tough situation all around. And here's another ethical dilemma. What if these medications end up widening the gap between the haves and the have-nots? We're talking about expensive drugs that not everyone will be able to afford.
It's kind of like what happened with smartphones. Remember how they went from being this luxury item to something almost everyone
Oh,
has?
yeah, totally. Now it's like you can't live without one.
Exactly. Now imagine a similar thing happening with these medications. What if a big chunk of society can suddenly control their weight easily and effectively, while others are left behind? Could we see a whole new level of health disparity, where the wealthy are thin and healthy, and everyone else struggles with the consequences of obesity?
It does kind of feel like those old diet drug stories, like fen-phen, it was supposed to be this miracle cure, then bam, all these heart problems. Makes you want to be careful with anything that sounds too good to be true, right?
Oh, absolutely. Every new medication comes with risks, and these weight loss drugs are no different. We have to remember, we're always learning new things in medicine. What we think we know today might change completely tomorrow.
So if you're trying to figure out whether to try something like Ozempic, how do you even begin to weigh the good against the bad?
It's tough, that's for sure. There's no easy answer. I mean, on the one hand, obesity is a serious health problem. It's linked to so many other diseases.
Hmm.
If these medications can help people get to a healthier weight safely and lower those risks, well, that's a huge win for public health.
Right, but, and there's always a but, right?
Exactly. We can't just ignore the potential downsides, all those unknowns. These medications, they're not magic. They might help with the weight, but they don't fix the root causes, and those can be complicated.
It's like that obesogenic environment we talked about, right?
Yeah.
Being surrounded by cheap processed food all the time. It's not like people are choosing to eat unhealthy. Sometimes it's just the easiest option.
That's the thing.
Yeah.
The world we live in makes it hard to maintain a healthy weight. And then there's the whole mental and emotional side of things, like comfort eating. How do these medications affect those coping mechanisms? We don't have all the answers yet.
So where does this leave us? What's the takeaway for someone listening who's trying to make sense of all this information?
That's the million-dollar question, right? The truth is, we're still in the early stages of understanding these medications, what they do long-term, how they'll impact society as a whole. There's still a lot of question marks.
It feels like we're on the verge of something big, though. A whole new way of thinking about weight loss, maybe even addiction. It's exciting, a little scary, and we definitely need to be having these conversations, being open and honest about both the good and the bad.
I totally agree. These conversations are crucial. We need to stay informed, understand the potential benefits and risks, and think about the bigger picture. What we do now will have a ripple effect. It'll shape things down the line.
No pressure, right. But really, that's what it comes down to. Staying informed, making choices that feel right for you, and advocating for a healthier future for everyone. Do your research, talk to your doctor, and stay tuned because this story is far from over. This is just the beginning of a much bigger conversation, and we'll be here to dive deeper as things unfold.